first for breaking news and the best live sport.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
And this morning's your call for you at 9 o'clock. Let me announce it officially. Is it time to ban ritual slaughter? Britain's new chief vet, John Blackwell, wants to ban the religious slaughter of animals if Muslims and Jews refuse to kill them in a more humane way and stun them before killing them.
The application of the stun, whether it be by a mechanical process or electrical current, creates an immediate insensibility so that the animal cannot perceive noxious stimuli, does not feel pain until death supervenes.
Halal and kosher slaughterhouses kill animals by basically hanging them upside down and slitting their throats, which their butchers say means the animals instantly lose the blood supply to their heads, leading to a painless death. Jonathan Arkush is Vice President of the Board of Deputies of British Jews.
Animals don't bleed to death. Their throats are cut, and that leads to instant loss of consciousness when the blood supply doesn't reach the brain.
Campaigners disagree, say the animals can take minutes to die and can be in huge amounts of pain and distress when they do. Denmark has already banned kosher and halal slaughter. Should the UK do the same? Is it time to ban ritual slaughter? 0500 909 693. Social media at BBC 5 Live. Liz is in Devon. We're going to go straight to a listener on this. Should ritual slaughter of animals be banned? Make a quick point, Liz. Good morning.
Good morning, Nicky. Yes, absolutely, it should be banned. My husband is also a veterinary surgeon, 41 years, so we spend all our lives saving animals, being with animals, loving animals, and the thought that any of them, that the human race has any right to kill any animal through religion or enjoyment in that fact, i.e. pheasant shooting,
kill through religion.
Like that.
I mean, do you eat meat? Do you eat meat? No.
I do, yeah.
Right, okay,
yes,
so,
and I make sure that I source my meat locally from local farmers. It's something that I'm very, very keen on because, I know that those animals have been reared in a very nice and humane way and slaughtered in a humane way also. We rear our own chickens and have the lovely eggs from them. So, I'm not a vegetarian at all, but the thought that animals are killed purely for somebody's religion, to me, is totally abhorrent.
OK, let's speak to Adnan Rashid, who is an imam and a senior researcher at the Hittin Institute. Adnan, good morning.
Good morning, Nicky. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Peter Stevenson is there as well from Compassion in World Farming. Hello, Peter.
Right.
Hi. Good morning.
Adnan, the Chief Veterinary Officer, John Blackwell, President-elect of the British Veterinary Association, of cutting the throat of the animal, says the sensation of blood in the trachea is like the pain when food goes down the wrong way into your windpipe. When you check the lungs of these animals, there's clearly blood that has been aspirated. People say we're trying to focus on the last 5 or 6 seconds of an animal's life when it could be 18 months old. It's 5 or 6 seconds too long. How do you respond to that? Adnan.
First of all, I would like to say that I'm not a scientist, but I have read some works on this. Animal pain is a very contentious issue. Whether animals actually do have the consciousness to feel that pain is another...
Oh, God.
Okay, if you let me
animal
finish my
pain
point.
Is a consent to... sorry.
No, animal consciousness to pain. Animal consciousness is an issue which has been debated and is contentious. First of all, that's one point I would like to make.
Hang on, all animals?
I'm not saying all animals. Animal pain in general. The level of pain animals feel, whether it's the same as humans or any other beings, is a debated issue. And if you want me to pull out some journals... Okay.
That is ridiculous.
Right, okay. I mean, you may find it difficult to believe, but if you go into medical research in this particular issue, you will come to realize that animal consciousness is a very highly debated, contentious issue. Okay, and it depends on the research you follow and the view you're inclined towards. You will base your conclusions on that particular view. So what I'm trying to argue here is that, first of all, that issue is contentious. Number two, with regards to religious freedom in this country, if there are certain religions which ensure that animals are slaughtered in a humane way, which is what Judaism and Islam stands for. Both the Jewish religion and the Islamic religion have checks and balances in place that animals do not suffer while the slaughter what you call ritual slaughter takes place.
On the consciousness issue, do you accept that? I mean, it's fascinating what you say. Do you think that the more cognitive animals, the animals who have self-awareness, such as our closest relatives, are they as conscious?
We don't consume those animals for meat. We don't eat chimpanzees, or we don't eat horses, or for that matter. What we do
we do actually eat horses, but there we are.
Okay, yes.
Okay, Peter Stevenson. Peter Stevenson. That aside, and I'm as to whether it's a contentious issue in science is frankly a moot point. Peter Stevenson, come back on that.
No, the science has been clear for many, many years that animals are sentient, that they are capable of feeling pain. I totally agree with the call for a ban on religious slaughter, where that slaughter means that the animals are not stunned before throat cutting. Because with some Muslim slaughter, they are stunned. But when they're not stunned, then that should be banned. Because what it means is that the animal is fully conscious when its throat is cut. Now, the science shows that involves massive suffering, both because of the throat cut, but then during the time gap between the throat cut and loss of consciousness, which the science is very clear, says for cattle and poultry can be up to 2 minutes of immense suffering. So Britain should now follow the lead of Denmark, Sweden, Poland, and ban religious slaughter without stunning. All animals should be stunned, made unconscious before the throat cut.
Okay, let's take your, I've got to say, highly contentious issue about animal pain aside. Let's concentrate on the science of that moment of death. Let's see now. We've got Adam in Teesside, we've got Jeff in New Barnet, we've got Cliff in East Grinstead. Go on, Cliff.
Oh, hello, Nicky. Yes. I've heard the discussions this morning about how much animals feel pain.
Well, let's not go there because I think the science is actually pretty clear on that. Let's talk about the moment of death.
My point was that apart from discussing that particular point, which we can do for an awful long time,
not really. I think it's sorted out. But let's talk about the moment of death.
I was just wondering whether even a moderate Muslim or Jew could look me in the eye and tell me whether they really believe that God worries or cares about how animals are killed that they eat.
There's a point. Yeah. Liz, I'll come back to you in a minute because I'm sure you want to come back, Liz. Adnan Rashid, why is this so important to God?
First of all, the question we need to address is, does God exist? Okay, if there are people who believe that God exists, then they are quite consistent with their beliefs. Because if they believe God exists, then that same God has revealed scriptures, and in these scriptures, God has given instructions as to how you may slaughter animals for food. Now, slaughtering of these animals is not purely for the reasons of ritual. Rather, there are other aspects to it, which we usually ignore. For example, feeding the poor. And making sure that we are receiving right amount of nutrition. Okay, we have K9s, so humans have been made to eat meat. Okay, it's part of our nature, and I find it really hypocritical when people talk about kindness to humans, which I agree. By the way, I agree with being kind to animals, not slaughtering them in humane fashion. But the kind of videos I've come across on the net where people are mistreating animals in abattoirs. And it is very, very painful to watch some of those videos. But in our religion, for example, in Islam, which is what I represent, we have clear instructions as to how we must treat animals before we slaughter them. The knife has to be absolutely sharp. Okay, you cannot do it in front of other animals. You cannot treat the animal inhumanely. You have to make sure that animal feels minimal.
Why not in front of another animal?
Because it causes pain to other animals watching another one
so
animal.
It does cause pain to an... Oh, okay. Liz, do you want to come back here?
That
yes,
pain...
I'd love to, Nicky. I'd just like to ask the gentleman, we, as a human race, we are animals. We are still animals. People forget this. So
we're primates.
We're
primates,
They wouldn't slaughter a human being. Well, they might do, but they wouldn't slaughter a human being. So why should they slaughter an animal? I can't understand. Animals are beautiful.
Well, we slaughter animals.
So
you eat animals. You eat animals. They
yes.
are slaughtered. Jeff in New Barnet. Yeah. What do you want to say, Jeff? Good morning to you.
First of all, good morning, Nicky. I'd like to say this, that in the slaughtering of animals in the kosher in the Jewish religion, the men that undertake this koshering, killing, are not just anybody. They are trained for something from 3 to 4 years, so that they are trained in killing the animal in the most humane way. Also, once the animal is killed, the animal itself is inspected for any disease or mistreatment. Those animals are not allowed into the food chain. Now, we've all seen programs about abattoirs and the way the animals are mistreated. That does not happen in the slaughter in a kosher manner.
Are you Jewish, by the way? May I ask? I mean, do you have an interest in this? Do you have a?
No. I just eat the food.
Right,
The one part of my religion that even when I did my national service, because I couldn't have kosher meat, I had to be a vegetarian. But I lived away from London. I had to travel a considerable distance to get food which my religion tells me to eat. And by the way, this ritual slaughtering, as you say, is actually in the Bible. So it was laid down many years ago, and kosher means cleanliness. We don't put lobsters into boiling water whilst they're alive. We don't eat shellfish because it's regarded as unclean.
So it's not. But Matthew 15:11.
Before you insult a religious one,
Matthew.
Lots of listeners don't even understand how it's done.
Matthew 15:11. It's not what goes into the mouth that contaminates a person in God's sight.
Yes,
it's what comes out of the mouth that contaminates a person. Let Peter Stevenson come back on this. Peter Stevenson.
Thanks very much. I think, the science on this is so clear that immense suffering is involved.
But aren't we being hypocritical?
Can I also talk about the sheer number of animals slaughtered without stunning in this country? Each year we slaughter about 30 million chickens, over 2 million sheep, some 90,000 cattle without stunning. Now, this is, again, a survey done by the government's Food Standards Agency showed that many more animals are being slaughtered without stunning than are needed for the Muslim and Jewish population of this country. That's largely because out of commercial convenience, abattoirs sometimes just don't bother stunning animals, even if they're not for the Muslim and Jewish communities. Now, we've raised this with our government. We've said that they should follow the example of countries like France and Ireland, which have strict laws to make sure that no more animals are slaughtered without stunning than are needed for the religious communities, and our government has refused to do this.
Thank you very much. Adnan, I'll come back to you in a moment or two to find out what the impact this would have were a similar law to that pertaining in Denmark were it to be brought in here. We've got Adam in Teesside and Cliff in East Grinstead. Maybe a good self. 0500 909 693. Thank you all. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Jeff. Here's Michelle.
This is 5 Live Breakfast. Your call.
Well, lined up for you, we've got Jacob in London, Laura in Milton Keynes, Adam in Teesside, Nizar in the London area. What a lineup. And Peter Stevenson, Compassion in World Farming. Now, Adnan, if I may ask you, if there were to be a law brought in like that in Denmark, which has banned purely for animal welfare reasons, the unilateral ritual slaughter, unilaterally expanded ritual slaughter. What effect would that have on Muslims and also Jews in this country? What effect would it have on you?
Well, when you say ban ritual slaughter, do you mean ban slaughter at all, or the slaughter would have to be stunned? Is that what you mean by the ban?
Well, Denmark has banned kosher and halal slaughter. What would that effect be here?
Okay, if halal...
That are not stunned first. You're absolutely right. That are not stunned first. They must be stunned.
Right.
Obviously.
Then in that case, slaughterhouses would have to find a way around the law and do things accordingly.
How would they do that?
They would stun the animals.
Well,
the only problem is with chickens. The problem is with the chickens, because chickens, some of them, the research I have come across shows that some chickens die before they're slaughtered, and that chicken simply would be wasted if it's dead before it's slaughtered. It wouldn't be halal, and I'm sure the Jews would agree with me on that point, that if it dies before slaughter, then it's not kosher. So that kind of law wouldn't really help things in any way. I mean, I don't see the point of banning kosher and halal when chicken is dying before it's slaughtered. I mean, how do you argue that chicken suffers less when it's stunned and it dies than when it's slaughtered?
Okay.
I don't see the point here.
Okay, so the issue is stunning. They'd be able to stun if that were properly regulated, Peter Stevenson. The issue seems to be chickens.
I fully accept that those Muslims who are willing to accept stunning want to make sure that the animal is only made unconscious and not killed by the stun. But it's perfectly possible to set the electrical stunning apparatus to appropriate currents and frequencies, which means that the animal will not be killed. It will be made unconscious, but the death will be done at the time of the throat cut.
I find this argument very ironic. Doesn't stunning cause any pain? Does it cause pain?
No, let me be clear. Stunning, if done properly, and I accept that sometimes it's not done properly, but if done properly, makes an animal instantly unconscious and it doesn't feel any pain. Can I just finish? It means that it's sensible at the time of throat cutting.
Let me bring Nizar in right. London and Laura in Milton Keynes. Nizar, I believe you're a Muslim. What would you like to say about this, sir?
Thank you very much for this, Nicky. I'm a Muslim, and I'm also giving talks up and down the country and elsewhere on the issue of animal slaughter. And I'm fully subscribed to the fact that animal must be put into an easy position before slaughter, and that means to be made unconscious. The only law required in the Islamic law about animal slaughter is that the animal must be alive at the point of slaughter, not conscious. Being conscious is an extended argument which is totally artificial. The animal must be put into a very easy position, and the knife must be sharpened, and animals must not see other animals being slaughtered. And therefore, the only way to make sure all these things happen is to stun the animal. And incidentally, today's stunning procedures and technology is so advanced that with the proper stunning mechanism and properly calibrated instruments, you can actually make sure that the animal is instantly made unconscious before slaughter. And that is the only way to ensure that the Islamic law is complied with.
What if the animal is killed when stunned?
The animal shouldn't be killed. The stunning mechanism, you have to calibrate it to make sure the amperage, the voltage, and the time sequences are actually fitting the description
Peter Stevenson,
and the manufacturer's specification.
That's a very delicate calibration, Peter Stevenson, isn't it?
No, it's
possible, is it?
As Nizar says, with modern stunning equipment, it is perfectly possible, whether you're talking about chickens, cattle, or sheep, to make sure that what you do is produce unconsciousness, which is what a stun is, that you don't inadvertently kill the animal. So the whole idea, and I totally accept what Nizar is saying, is that by the time the throat is going to be cut, the animal can't feel any pain, it's unconscious, but it's still alive, and therefore the religious requirement that the animal is alive at the time of throat cutting will be fulfilled.
Problem solved.
Indeed, problem solved.
Right. What else will we discuss? I mean,
well, what else we could discuss?
Problem is not quite solved. I have another question.
Problem's not solved. Go on.
I have another question.
Right.
What about blood flow? I mean, I've come across some claims that the blood flow is far less when the animal is stunned than when it's not stunned. So
that's simply not the case. The science for 20 or 30 years has looked at this exhaustively with cattle and with sheep and found that the blood flow is as quick and as complete when an animal is stunned as when it is not stunned.
So blood flow,
what you say is simply not true.
Blood flow seems to be a big issue here. Laura in Milton Keynes, and Jacob, I'll come to you in Adam. Hello, Laura.
Oh, hello, Nicky. I'm glad you brought up this subject, and hey-ho to wonderful Denmark. This is a subject that's haunted me, and I'm sure you as an animal lover, Nicky, and I wonder if you personally would go down to a halal slaughterhouse and watch these animals being
Well, I wouldn't
killed.
go to any slaughterhouse. I'm that much of a hypocrite.
Well,
I wouldn't go to any... I'll have it on my plate, but I don't want to go to a slaughterhouse. What hypocrisy!
Well, why wouldn't you? Because you realise yourself how nasty the whole thing is.
Because I'm putting my fingers in my ears and over, and I'm going la 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 la. I don't want to know. That's what.
I have a friend who is a recently retired butcher.
in Romania.
Sorry, somebody. I think someone's speaking off the air to somebody else. Laura, you plough on.
Yeah. I had a friend who is a recently retired butcher. He was approached by a halal butcher in Milton Keynes, and was asked would he bring one of his cows down and slaughter it down in his butchery, where he has a legal abattoir. And so my friend said yes, of course. So he brought the animal down, and he said, never, ever, ever again will I let an animal go through what I've just seen. In fact, it has haunted him for years. And I don't understand why any animals, dropping lobsters into hot water, crabs into hot water, why do we have to do this? These animals, they have the same feelings as we do, same emotions, and yet we're treating them disgracefully. And I would like to find out, just because an animal can't talk, it doesn't mean to say it hasn't got fear. And it smells blood and it wants to run, and we would do the same. I would like to hang these people up.
That's too extreme.
Well,
Can I just say that's going too far, Laura. But you make a very good point and that is why there is this injunction that the animals should not see another animal being slaughtered. Jacob, we welcome you. Good morning.
Can I say just before Jacob comes on, because I'm sure I've finished with my point, but Nicky, can I congratulate you on being the most wonderful, wonderful animal spokesman? Well, and we should have your voice more often.
I'm impartial. I'm impartial. And this is because thanks so much. I bet we have stopped the ritual slaughter of animals, says Top Vet. That's why we're discussing this. Jacob in London, good morning.
Good morning. Did I hear that last caller correctly in saying something about hanging up Jews? Is that what she said?
No. She said the people who do this should be hung up. She didn't really. I don't think, to be fair to Laura, it was necessarily an anti-Semitic comment. She was talking about people who do this to animals, and I think that would be unfair of you to make that accusation, Jacob. She was being passionate. She was in full flow, and I would not impute to her any of those motives. What's your point?
The whole tone of this discussion, I listened just before 8 o'clock when you had a gentleman on from the Jewish Board of Deputies and another gentleman on. The tone is as if you're implying that kosher slaughter or Muslim is barbaric. That is something that's been practiced for 4,000 years in the Torah. Why do people think that in 2014 we are cleverer than what has been practiced for the last 4,000 years? The Torah specifically says in various places about animal cruelty. One must treat your animals correctly. If you you must make sure the animal eats before you eat. This is a practice that's been carried out for thousands of years.
But attitudes to women, attitudes to gay people, attitudes in society, attitudes to witches, attitudes to stoning adulteresses, attitudes to... those things have all met the blaze of enlightenment.
Maybe in the Christian religion, but not in the Jewish religion, and I don't think in the Muslim religion. Right. And we don't oppress our women. I find that
I'm talking about
and disgusting. Even imply something like that.
The Old Testament. What you wouldn't call the Old Testament, but you know what I mean. I'm talking from.
I know what you mean. Yeah. We don't oppress our women.
I'm not saying you do.
Incorrect.
I'm not saying you do.
No, you said that these things are all in the past.
No, I didn't.
Why do people think in 2014 we are cleverer than all the other thousands and thousands of people who have lived, and there have been some very clever ones among them.
Because scientists have come
along. And
all
of a sudden in 2014 we're a lot cleverer. You just have to look what's going on in the world. Look what's going on in Syria. Look what's going on in Ukraine. Look what's going on in Egypt.
Human nature.
I mean,
exactly.
We're all so hung up about whether the animal is going to suffer 5 seconds longer or not.
I'm sure you use the phrase "hung up" advisedly. Jacob, thank you very much indeed. It's 9:30. A lot of passions here. We'll steer our way through it in the next half hour. 0500 909 693, and here's the weather.
5 Live.
Hello, Clive in Cumbria. Hello, Adam in Teesside. Adam, what would you like to say? We're talking about whether ritual slaughter of animals should be banned, whether they should absolutely be stunned first. Adam, what do you think?
Hi, Nicky. Good morning.
Morning.
I've listened to a few things of what the people have said this morning.
Oh, yeah.
Even Jacob, who's a Jew. I'm actually a Muslim. Basically, we need to do more research so people can understand exactly what it is. But we can't put aside what has been going on for, like Jacob said before, 4,000 years. Animal kindness hasn't just come about in the last 40 years. If I can just start off by saying that to defend Islam, that in Islam we must treat animals with kindness, because I'll tell you something. On the day of judgment, animals that have been treated badly will come and will testify against you. They will come and they will testify against you. And that is a simple fact.
Where does it say? Where does it say that? This is fascinating. Where does it say that?
No,
is it in the Quran?
It doesn't say it specifically in the Quran.
Is it in the Hadith?
It's somewhere in the Hadith. I don't want to sort of say where it's come from. It's definitely there.
Just to qualify for people, Adam. Just to qualify for people, the Quran is the unmediated word of God, and the Hadith are the sayings of the Prophet. Right. So the animals will testify you on that you've been cruel to on the Day of Judgment.
If you've harmed an animal, or if you've wronged an animal, or treated an animal with cruelty, even if you've given him water, if you fed the animal, this animal will come, and a person can be given reward for that.
It's not in Hadith. The Prophet in Hadith, did he not? Was it not hang on, wait. There's I think this is a lovely story. Was it not a prostitute who there was a thirsty dog, and she filled her shoes with water, and she gave the dog water to drink.
Now, Nicky, this story, every Muslim in the world will know about this story.
And the prostitute was forgiven.
If they go to Friday prayer, they'll know about this story.
Yeah.
And this, if you read it, the thing I'm trying to do is in one sense, I'm trying to defend Islam, and at the same time, because this is a Jewish subject as well, I'm trying to defend them as well, because the Quran confirms Judaism. Now, in these two, there's another story where where a woman put a cat into a cupboard and never fed her, and she was damned for that.
Was she?
Okay. Now, if we can just for a second learn about the kindness that Islam teaches us for kindness for animals, we would understand that the slaughtering of animals to feed us, it can't come into it. There's no.
But how? But what about
there?
What if the animals are going to? You can in a minute. If the animals are going to testify against you, should you really be slaughtering anything that's going to talk?
Nicky, the way in which we slaughter animals, I'm not an expert. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm an expert on this, yeah? But the way in which we do it, it seems on the face of it not to be humane. But believe me, one of you guys who, before the question, said that basically when you cut the animal's jugular vein or the vein, he instantly becomes knocked out. Now,
okay, Adam, thank you.
This is known to be true.
Well, there's contention about it, but Adam, it's been wonderful hearing your very, very calmly delivered thoughts on this. Clive in Cumbria, you wanted to come in, you can come in.
Yes, I've listened with great interest to that tale from a religious book many centuries ago. I think let's bring it back to the real issue today, and the real issue is the horrific butchering of animals in the halal manner. Now, to take an animal, to hang it upside down, to slit its throat, and I've seen these videos, and these poor animals, are in terror, they kick and they scream, and they're in death throes of agony for minutes and minutes and minutes. Now, I come from a sheep farming community, and I was sitting with sheep farmers the other night, and we were discussing this topic. As you know, it's in the news. We're talking about it today on the radio. And those sheep farmers in Cumbria, if they were to take their lambs and hang them up and cut their throats without stunning them humanely, as is the law in this country, they would face huge fines, prosecution, loss of livelihood, and maybe even jail. Now, to be I was just listening to that gentleman there. He's got his own views. He's on about animals, forgiving them and facing the animal after death and all that. Let's be really truthful about that. That's a story in a book thousands of years ago. We're on about animal welfare in a country of animal lovers today in Britain. Now, the British farmers can't do it. It's our laws, and our laws have been circumvented by a religion that's not native to this country and not followed by the majority of this country.
Well, it's followed by it's followed by very many British citizens, so we have to take cognizance of it. I can't even say that. But listen, wait. Mark Fraser's going to come in on that, and you've made a really good point, and a really interesting one, and a really relevant one. Mark Fraser is from the... Sorry, how do I pronounce this, Mark?
It's Shechita UK.
I had problem with cognizance, and so I'm bound to have problems with that.
No problem.
This is a community-wide campaign that unites representatives from across the Jewish community. And also, we've got David Bowles. Hello, David.
Hi, Nicky.
Head of RSPCA's Public Affairs. Mark Fraser, you heard there from Clive that if British farmers were to slaughter in the halal way meat for export, they would be prosecuted. Mark?
Yeah, I mean, the position of the government is that animals should be mechanically stunned before slaughter, unless, of course, there are faith communities who are carrying out slaughter for the purposes of food for Jews or indeed for Muslims. That's what the law says. He's correct. But I mean, I think that the thing which really has troubled us today is that Mr. Blackwell, who's the incoming president of the British Veterinary Association,
yes,
is focusing on religious slaughter. He seems to be claiming that this is the single most concerning issue relating to animal welfare at the moment.
Has he said that?
And well, it would seem strange that he would choose this as his sort of his campaign.
Wait. It's like saying what's happening in if you talk about Syria, people are going to say, oh well, what about rape in the Democratic Republic of Congo? It's possible to be concerned about a number of areas, and he's said he's opened this one up for debate. Who knows what else he may open up for debate in future weeks?
Indeed, and we're looking forward to hearing what he thinks. For example, about we heard recently of an animal aid investigation into incredible cruelty at slaughterhouses, which makes the 15 or 20,000 cows slaughtered by the Jewish community every year look insignificant. Even if his position, which it seems to be, is that what we do is unspeakably cruel, which of course we would take issue with, it just baffles me and it baffles the Jewish community. The amount of focus that seems constantly to be heaped upon the religious slaughter that's carried out. It makes no sense to us.
Now, okay, do you want to come in here, David Bowles? Is this cruel? Do you have scientific proof that slitting an animal's throat while it is still alive, albeit perhaps unconscious, is causing the animal, as the top vet-to-be says, pain?
Yes, I mean, the RSPCA, obviously, we recognise religious belief should be respected. So this is not about religion. This is about animal welfare. And as you would expect from the largest animal welfare organisation in the world, we come at it purely from that perspective. And there is fairly good scientific evidence, and there have been fairly good experiments done in New Zealand that there are welfare problems if you don't stun before cutting the throat of the animal. So we would certainly agree with the BVA about this. But I'd like to move it on to another area, which
Can
is
I ask
really,
you something? Why aren't we getting exercised about animals used in medical research?
Well,
Why aren't we getting exercised about beagles? And in America, although not public institutions, and no longer in this country, no longer in Europe, primates are experimented on. Why? I mean, surely this is a minuscule issue.
The RSPCA campaigns on all those issues that you just mentioned, Nicky, and indeed primates are used in the UK, and we are working very closely.
Are they?
with...
Which primates are used in the UK in research?
Marmosets are used, and macaques are used. No grey tapes are used, but primates are still used in the UK. And last year, the number of cats and dogs that were used in the UK went up. So yes, we are very concerned about that.
But the point is there are other issues. Why this issue?
But so just to focus on this issue, I mean, what the RSPCA, obviously we know there are welfare problems with the slaughtering of animals without pre-stunning them. But what we would also like to focus on is that if people are buying meat or any other product, we reckon there's about 114 million animals killed a year using halal or shikita. And if you're buying that, but you don't know that the animal has not been killed according to and not been pre-slaughtered, we think you should be given that information. The European Commission have got a study on this at the moment. They are looking at whether to label meat and other products based on how they have been slaughtered. We would agree with that because at the moment, I think there are still people who are buying meat who do not realise that it has been slaughtered without pre-stunning, and if they had that choice, they wouldn't buy that meat. And I think it's very important, just from a consumer and a transparency angle, that they are given that information.
Thank you very much indeed. For now, at 9:48, here's Michelle.
This is 5 Live Breakfast. Your call.
And it's Sarah in Preston, Claire in Edgware, Bill in Worcester. Sarah, hello.
Hi there.
I was in Preston yesterday. What a thing. There we are. And what would you like to say?
Okay, so I am Jewish, and the point that I wanted to make was that within my home, rather than buying kosher meat, we buy free-range organic meat. The reason being that I have looked at the evidence, thought about the welfare of animals, and actually what is most important to me is how the animal lives rather than how the animal dies. But my point being is that I have that choice. If shechita, the ritual slaughter, was outlawed in the country, that choice then would be taken away from me. And as a Jew, I feel that it would be in some ways oppressive to me not to have that choice. I obviously respect the choices that other people make, that they wish to eat kosher meat or halal meat or meat that is slaughtered in the ritual way. But for me, what is most important to me is how the animal lived rather than how it died. I also wanted to speak about, there was a lady that was on at the top of the programme, and I think she had some misconceptions about the reasons behind ritual slaughter. It sounded to me like she thought that animals were being slaughtered for sacrifice, and I just wanted to kind of reiterate that actually these animals are being slaughtered for consumption rather than for ritual sacrifice. So,
but God has commanded how they should be slaughtered. Yeah.
Well, yes. I mean, it is written. If God exists, it's written in the Torah that that this is the way that animals should be slaughtered. My point being that that choice should be available to people.
Is there something about the desert societies from which the Quran and the Bible and the Torah emanated, which dictated that this means of slaughter was more hygienic?
So it could be argued that that when these laws were written down, that these were the first kind of food hygiene inspectors ever, but. And actually, that isn't relevant today.
Yeah.
That isn't relevant to me today.
Well, it's relevant. If it was a cultural reason rather than a command from God, which.
So that's another argument that that actually kashrut, the act of being kosher is a cultural thing, just like cream cheese and bagels and smoked salmon on is a cultural thing, but and for me, it is more, as I've already said, it's more important to me how the animal lived rather than how it died.
Very well put.
That is my personal choice.
Yeah.
And should that choice be taken away from me, then I would feel in some way oppressed, I think.
Okay, oppressed. Interesting. Strong word, emotive word. Sarah, let's listen to Claire in Edgware. Hi, Claire.
Yeah, good morning, Nicky. Well, we certainly should be concerned about how animals die because that directly impacts on our health. The research has shown now that
it's all about us. It's all about us.
You should not be consuming meat where an animal has died in trauma. When an animal dies in trauma, it releases toxins into its body, which we all do, and that gets into the muscle fibre. It actually poisons the muscle fibre. We have huge incidences of stomach cancer in the West, all forms of cancer. Also, that lady who said she was Jewish, there are huge levels of Crohn's disease in the Jewish community. And there's a lot of cancer in the Muslim community, and the research is now indicating that we could well be eating food that we've managed to pre-poison before we've consumed it. So we certainly should be concerned about how an animal dies.
There's a point here, David Bowles. Well, that's the point. David Bowles, head of RSPCA's Public Affairs. Animals, some friend of mine who used to work in a slaughterhouse said they used to stroke the cows to calm them down like that before killing them, for just the reasons that we heard from Claire. David Bowles. David Bowles.
Well, the UK has very strict slaughter regulations, and of course the method of slaughter is very important, and that's why, because we know that there is scientific proof that if you don't stun an animal before you cut its throat, then it does suffer, sometimes for quite a period of time. That's why the RSPCA believes that you shouldn't have slaughter without pre-stunning.
The meat is, whatever she says about toxins, the meat is not, that people in slaughterhouses will tell you, the meat is not as tender and as good if the animal has not been calm when it's been slaughtered, because it's tense and it's stressed. So
Yeah,
if that is the case, all this halal meat would be very, very tough, but it's not.
Well, I mean, there's two issues here. There is good evidence that if the animal is stressed, then it has an impact on the meat. I don't know enough about halal meat to go into that. What I'm looking at it is.
Well, you've eaten it. We've all eaten it.
What I'm looking at is at it from an animal welfare perspective, and the RSPCA. We know that there is clear evidence that there is welfare problems in the slaughter without pre-stunning, and we also know that people are inadvertently buying meat that hasn't been pre-stunned. And I think they should be given that information before they buy it.
Mark Fraser.
Yeah, I mean, the position of the Jewish community on labelling is that everyone has a right to know what they're eating. In fact, Jews can't eat anything unless it has a label on it. That's very, very clear. Your earlier caller who talked about the stress in the animal, there's no question that if an animal is stressed, then the meat will suffer as a result. And actually, a lot of what kosher religious slaughter focuses on is not the last 2 seconds of the animal's life. It's actually the way the animal is reared and the way the animal is treated in life. And some of your listeners will know that if an animal is harmed in any way prior to slaughter, then it won't be kosher, and that's why kosher meat is always treated, and animals are always treated superbly right up until the point of slaughter. And then, of course, there is a scientific debate to be had about the humaneness of religious slaughter versus conventional mechanical industrial slaughter, and the RSPCA will point to Massey University study. We might in turn point to Colorado State University, Cornell University. There's no question that there is a debate to be had, and we're quite happy to have that debate. What we would say...
That's why you're on.
Absolutely right. But what we would say is that in the meantime, to suggest that there is scientific consensus is not correct, and therefore for the British Veterinary Association, or indeed for the RSPCA, to draw a conclusion and to say that religious slaughter is less humane is unfair.
Okay. Bill in Worcester. Hello, Bill.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
Very well.
I've been listening to your program. Some of the people talking, I don't know whether they're seen on or what. I mean, I don't think of it as driven.
They're very young, some of them, very young, but there we are.
If some of those went into a slaughterhouse, the halal killing is very similar to our own killing. But you take kosher killing, that's the cruelest killing of the lot. I wouldn't watch it. It frightens me. It is the most diabolical...
Okay, what happens... Mark, we'll let Mark back in a minute. What happens in kosher killing that you find so diabolical?
What I find, you'll get with an ordinary beast or hair trade, he goes into the stunning box and he's shot with a humane killer. Bang it down and then it's rolled out and stuck. Now, in the kosher killing, last time I saw it in Birmingham a long time ago, they put him into a casting pen. The pen is then rolled over, so the beast is upside down. They slit his throat, Then the rabbi gets a long knife and he cuts his throat. And you see the eyes of the beast rolls like a bloody gaming machine.
Watch the language. Some people might be offended. It's all right, but we can hear how emotive that is. Mark, you've got to come back on that before we close this debate. Here's the point, though. Maybe some places do, as you put it, treat the animals superbly beforehand, but maybe others are just not so well regulated. Is it a matter of regulation in your communities, as it might be in Muslim communities?
Well, actually, the regulation of kosher slaughter is actually something that we're particularly proud of. We have a body which is instituted by public law called the Rabbinical Commission for the Licensing of Shochtim, and that was set up a number of years ago to ensure that our regulation, our licensing is second to none. And what that means is we're able to keep a very, very close eye on the quality, the standards of religious slaughter in this country. And in fact, some listeners may be aware that in order to train to become a shochet, which is the Hebrew word for a slaughterman, you have to train for upwards of 7 years. And we're talking about the highest trained individuals in the country. You know, contrast that with a slaughterman who can be trained for 3 months and then be ready to go.
We're out of time. Thank you very much for all contributions this morning. Have a good Thursday, and thank you for listening. Cliff.
Oh, hello, Nicky. Yes. I've heard the discussions this morning about how much animals feel pain.
Well, let's not go there, because it's. I think the science is actually pretty clear on that. Let's talk about the moment of death.
My point was that apart from discussing that particular point, which we can do for an awful long time,
not really. I think it's sorted out. But let's talk about the moment of death.
I was just wondering whether even a moderate Muslim or Jew could look me in the eye and tell me whether they really believe that God worries or cares about how animals are killed that they eat.
There's a point. Yeah. Liz, I'll come back to you in a minute, because I'm sure you want to come back, Liz. Adnan Rashid, why is this so important to God?
First of all, the question we need to address is, does God exist? Okay, if there are people who believe that God exists, then they are quite consistent with their beliefs, because if they believe God exists, then that same God has revealed scriptures, and in these scriptures, God has given instructions as to how you may slaughter animals for food. Now, slaughtering of these animals is not purely for the reasons of ritual. Rather, there are other aspects to it, which we usually ignore. For example, feeding the poor, and making sure that we are receiving right amount of nutrition. Okay, we have K9s, so humans have been made to eat meat. Okay, it's part of our nature, and I find it really hypocritical when people talk about kindness to which I agree. By the way, I agree with being kind to animals, not slaughtering them in humane fashion. But the kind of videos I've come across on the net where people are mistreating animals.
Human race has any right to kill any animal through religion or enjoyment in that fact, i.e. pheasant shooting.
Kill through religion.
Like that.
I mean, do you eat meat? Do you eat meat?
I do, yes.
Right, okay,
yes, and I make sure that I source my meat locally from local farmers. It's something that I'm very, very keen on, because, I know that those animals have been reared in a very nice and humane way, and slaughtered in a humane way also. We rear our own chickens and have the lovely eggs from them. So, I'm not a vegetarian at all, but the thought that animals are killed purely for somebody's religion, to me, is totally abhorrent.
Okay, let's speak to Adnan Rashid, who is an imam and a senior researcher at the Hittin Institute. Adnan, good morning.
Good morning, Nicky. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Peter Stevenson is there as well, from Compassion in World Farming. Hello, Peter.
Right.
Hi. Good morning.
Adnan, the Chief Veterinary Officer, John Blackwell, President-elect of the British Veterinary Association, of cutting the throat of the animal, says the sensation of blood in the trachea is like the pain when food goes down the wrong way into your windpipe. When you check the lungs of these animals, there's clearly blood that has been aspirated. People say we're trying to focus on the last 5 or 6 seconds of an animal's life, when it could be 18 months old. It's 5 or 6 seconds too long. How do you respond to that? Adnan.
First of all, I would like to say that I'm not a scientist, but I have read some works on this. Animal pain is a very contentious issue, whether animals actually do.
first for breaking news and the best live sport.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
And this morning's your call for you at 9 o'clock. Let me announce it officially. Is it time to ban ritual slaughter? Britain's new chief vet, John Blackwell, wants to ban the religious slaughter of animals if Muslims and Jews refuse to kill them in a more humane way and stun them before killing them.
The application of the stun, whether it be by a mechanical process or electrical current, creates an immediate insensibility so that the animal cannot perceive noxious stimuli, does not feel pain until death supervenes.
Halal and kosher slaughterhouses kill animals by basically hanging them upside down and slitting their throats, which their butchers say means the animals instantly lose the blood supply to their heads, leading to a painless death. Jonathan Arkush is Vice President of the Board of Deputies of British Jews.
Animals don't bleed to death. Their throats are cut, and that leads to instant loss of consciousness when the blood supply doesn't reach the brain.
Campaigners disagree, say the animals can take minutes to die and can be in huge amounts of pain and distress when they do. Denmark has already banned kosher and halal slaughter. Should the UK do the same? Is it time to ban ritual slaughter? 0500 909 693. Social media at BBC5 Live. Liz is in Devon. We're going to go straight to a listener on this. Should ritual slaughter of animals be banned? Make a quick point. Liz, good morning.
Good morning, Nicky. Yes, absolutely, it should be banned. My husband is also a veterinary surgeon, 41 years, so we spend all our lives saving animals, being with animals, loving animals, and the thought that any of them... that
who have the consciousness to feel that pain...
What?
...is another...
Oh, God.
Okay, if you let me
Animal
finish my
pain
point.
is a consent to... sorry.
No, animal consciousness to pain. Animal consciousness is an issue which has been debated and is contentious. First of all, that's one point I would like to make.
Hang on, all animals?
I'm not saying all animals. Animal pain in general. The level of pain animals feel, whether it's the same as humans or any other beings, is a debated issue. And
No,
if
it's
you want
not.
me to pull out
I'm
some
sorry.
journals, okay, okay. Right, okay. I mean, you may find it difficult to believe, but if you go into medical research in this particular issue, you will come to realize that animal consciousness is a very highly debated, contentious issue. Okay, and it depends on the research you follow and the view you're inclined towards. You will base your conclusions on that particular view. So what I'm trying to argue here is that, first of all, that issue is contentious. Number two, with regards to religious freedom in this country, if there are certain religions which ensure that animals are slaughtered in a humane way, which is what Judaism and Islam stands for. Both the Jewish religion and the Islamic religion have checks and balances in place that animals do not suffer while the slaughter, what you call ritual slaughter, takes place.
On the consciousness issue, do you accept that? I mean, it's fascinating what you say. Do you think that the more cognitive animals, the animals who have self-awareness, such as our closest relatives, are they as conscious?
We don't consume those animals for meat. We don't eat chimpanzees or we don't eat horses, or for that matter. What we do is...
we do actually eat horses, but there we are.
Okay, yes.
Okay, Peter Stevenson. Peter Stevenson. That aside, and as to whether it's a contentious issue in science is frankly a moot point. Peter Stevenson, come back on that.
No, the science has been clear for many, many years that animals are sentient, that they are capable of feeling pain. I totally agree with the call for a ban on religious slaughter, where that slaughter means that the animals are not stunned before throat cutting. Because with some Muslim slaughter, they are stunned. But when they're not stunned, then that should be banned, because what it means is that the animal is fully conscious when its throat is cut. Now, the science shows that involves massive suffering, both because of the throat cut, but then during the time gap between the throat cut and loss of consciousness, which the science is very clear, says for cattle and poultry can be up to 2 minutes of immense suffering. So Britain should now follow the lead of Denmark, Sweden, Poland, and ban religious slaughter without stunning. All animals should be stunned, made unconscious before the throat cut.
Okay, let's take your I've got to say, highly contentious issue about animal pain aside, let's concentrate on the science of that moment of death. Let's see now. We've got Adam in Teesside, we've got Jeff in New Barnet, we've got Cliff in East Grinstead. Go on, Cliff.